Hello and welcome to the latest edition of the AIM Growth Partners podcast. Been really looking forward to this episode as today I'm joined by Chantal Bacon, the CEO and founder of Cornerstone X. Chantal, welcome to the show.
Hey, David. Wonderful to meet you and greetings from West Palm Beach, Florida.
Well, I'm sure it's probably much nicer weather with you than it is here in not so sunny Manchester. So very jealous and delighted to have you on the show.
Good to be here and thank you for your time.
So, Chantal, your business, Cornerstone X, has been going around for 2 and a bit years, and it's had some, really exciting traction and development over that period. But before we get stuck in, for those who don't already know who you are and who the business is, could we begin with a bit of a background to yourself?
Fabulous. So, David, anybody that's listening to the podcast, I want them to realize that I am a person that grew up not ever knowing a limit and striving to achieve things that are impossible, as that was really my driving force. Ended up being born in Toronto, Canada, coming to the UK actually, studied at Oxford University, and now very proud to be blessed to be a member of Oxford's Entrepreneurs I should say Oxford University's alumni board. And being in Oxfordshire, realizing the incredible talented people that's around, that inspired me to become an entrepreneur and start my own business. So a very interesting lesson that I learned at a young age is you either become an entrepreneur or you end up working for one. And along that process, it was this level of new invention, ideation, and growth that started to spur within me right at the beginning of COVID. So in 2020, when COVID was hitting, a lot of people decided to look at the pandemic, have certain questions, and there was a lot of confusion. Instead of being caught up in the noise of that, I went underground and started to study AI and technology, look at market trends, look at where ethics in AI was going, machine learning models, and I'm not technical. So my background is not even very business focused and based. But yet I used a lot of transferable skills to help me end up creating what we call Cornerstone X, my AI technology company that was founded 2 years ago. So being somebody that's non-technical, you have to find that right person that is technical, say as a CTO coming in, but also you need somebody that knows presentation, sales, marketing, presenting, and that business context to help really take an idea and launch it. And very soon, within the first year, my husband joined and came on board, and then he brought one of his good friends to join as well. And the three of us started to take the ideas from slideware to now, 2 years later, as proper software that's going to be sold internationally in markets here in the US, the UK, EU, and potentially the UAE by 2026. And we've gone out in the entrepreneurial journey, have to go raise funds. I know the whole story of creating a business plan, lessons learned and lessons earned, but that helped become the fabric and the DNA of who I am. And that's what really excites me. And that's one of the reasons why coming on your podcast, David, I was very impressed by some of the other people that you've interviewed. Many of them may be those industry experts, say in cybersecurity or even in AI and technology that's there. But sometimes finding the people that encompass many aspects of that is equally important. And it's also interesting stories that you're able to share with your audience.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And I think what a brilliant introduction. There's so much to kind of unpack there. Uh, so what I'd love to begin with is for parents migrated from Sri Lanka, correct? Talk to us a little bit about that and what the kind of lessons were instilled, from their journeys.
Great question, David. My parents were immigrants that came from Sri Lanka to Toronto, but they fled a civil war. So my parents, it was almost like Drive to Survive. You see the Netflix documentary that's out there, but in this context, not with cars and racing, it's a survival mechanism to help people have a better opportunity. And when you come from a very small, tiny island, being an immigrant, starting life with one suitcase and having to learn to defend and fight for your rights, your freedom and growth, those were aspects and traits that my parents instilled and thought in myself and my younger sister. Another big element that helped me on my journey was faith. For me, I'm a strong believer in Jesus Christ and the Bible and reading. It's very important. I ended up studying theology at Oxford, actually, philosophy, theology, meaning, morality, destiny, reason, and purpose in humanity. Those were some of the philosophical concepts that I love to grapple with. And when you have parents that bring you up in faith, but also with determination and strive to try to accomplish the best that you can, any opportunity that's given to you, take it and have that level of high achievement ingrained at you at a very young age. When you now start and you're in your early 30s, you've had decades of having that mindset put in. And that's what sets apart many entrepreneurs, many business leaders, and even many people that are technology leaders at the forefront of those industries because they have this innate compass within them to achieve things that are impossible and not ever have to put themselves within limits or boxes to fit certain silos that's there.
Wow, I think that's amazing. We've probably spoken before about a couple of guests I've had on previously who, shared similar experiences, not necessarily from Sri Lanka, but, they've spoken about their own sort of journeys of being second generation immigrants, for example, and how important that was, creating this entrepreneurial drive in them. You've come in and you set up a business in technology with no technical experience necessarily and without a business background. So talk about, how you've gone.
How does that work, right? Yeah, it's very unorthodox and it's not normal. And if I could go back in time, I would do things differently. But all I have is the cards that I was dealt with and the mentors and the people that I had. I think for me, I majored on understanding my purpose and my calling first in life. And then all these other aspects started to fall into place. You can find great business mentors, great business leaders, great technical mentors, industry experts that's there. That's what I spent time doing during COVID, interviewing, very similar to you, speaking to university professors, understanding what is a machine learning model, what is an algorithm, what is bias in AI, how does that affect a data set that's being processed by a machine learning model. But when you find this right industry expertise to guide you along the way, it changed things and it helped me just learn fast. My master's was in urban and international development with a small underlying level of theology from the University of Toronto. And that was what really inspired me because I got to do international development. So learning about business a little bit, but just understanding, okay, how do you present an idea? How do you grow an opportunity that's there? How do you create a framework? It wasn't really hands on application and practice, but a lot of my pedigree and educational learning was undergirded with elements of transferable skills, such as being a good communicator, a clear communicator, being able to take very complex ideas and thoughts and disseminate that information in a very easy way for people to comprehend and understand. Mirroring that with charisma, great attitude, and being able to be very proactive is what helped me achieve several different milestones in our company than other different, I would say, startups that are now in that genesis of looking into AI or cybersecurity and technology to come forth. And then for me, the final thing is I know my gaps, my limitations, and I'm not afraid of them. I also know when I need to hire people that are 10 times smarter than me, that have decades of experience more than me. I haven't taken a paycheck, and it's been over 2.5 years. I came to the US as an immigrant with one suitcase. I came to do my PhD research actually in technology, the ethics in technology and AI. And that was a scholarship that I got for my first and second year of my doctorate. And that's what helped me now think about patenting, sorry, some of the ideas that I created, which is now embedded into Cornerstone X. So even though I didn't have those formational, or if I should say foundational building blocks and education to lead me to where I am today, I was trying to be proactive and study these areas in conjunction with trying to be an entrepreneur and thought, okay, might as well take this risk, jump into it now, because a decade from now, I'll probably thank myself for doing this versus regretting and being in a job that I don't find fulfilling and life giving.
That's so inspiring. And it sounds like you're an incredibly reflective and introspective person. You've mentioned faith already. So I'm quite interested in understanding, is this something you've always had through your belief system, or is it something you learned along the way, the importance of reflecting and analyzing your strengths and weaknesses?
Yes. So for me, my parents grew up Anglican, so Church of England, and very familiar with the Anglican tradition and faith background. But that doesn't mean that I don't. I look at having a relationship with God as something very different than religion, but there's elements that are very similar. Many people will go to church, but may not understand what it's like to walk daily in relationship with the creator of the universe and have that intuition and insight. For me, we call those moments like sometimes we call it come to Jesus moments, but I wasn't strong in my faith for a period of my time. And then all of a sudden, there was a very important event that took place on September 3rd, around 2012, that time frame, where I learned that I had to change my life. We use the terms called metanoia, which is almost a 180-degree turn around from a form or a pattern of life that you've been walking on for a while. And through that process, coming to Oxford University was almost like rehab for my heart. I had to change my ideologies, my ways of thinking and learning and adapting to more of that contemplative self reflection. And because I spent a lot of my 20s, I would say 25 to 26, 27, that time frame doing that, the woman that I am today, founding a $30 million valuated company within 12 months and growing it with international partnerships and pitching multiples of millions of dollars every other day or so is not daunting to me. And because I took the time to work in myself in those late 20s, going to 30s, it's helped me. I don't know what fear even looks like anymore, but that's because I worked in myself and took the time for self reflection, journaling, meditation, prayer. Noticed a lot of the people that were mentors to me also walk on that same path. And the Bible is probably one of the greatest places that I go to actually get wisdom almost every day to help me on this course and the journey that I'm on.
So it sounds like religion's been that kind of guiding light, shining kind of the way for you. It sounds like you've consistently put yourself in difficult situations, which have allowed you to grow and flourish. So talk about, those decisions of moving to the US as you said, just with a suitcase and having your back up against a wall, what that really allowed you to discover and explore in yourself.
It's very hard to do that. And not too many people are willing to take the risk. I did it because it was almost this element of curiosity. But number two, I didn't have a choice. In order for me to succeed, I had to go to a place where there were better opportunities. Many people choose to be complacent and to stay where they're at in life, which is what may set people apart or back. But for me, I decided to do that to be intentional, but I also knew the value of what I had to contribute and give back to humanity. If I could get this idea funded and develop a technology that could help people be very efficient, automate workflows that's there, but also do it in a very empathetic way, then maybe there's a way that I could actually have global impact. And when you start off with a very audacious goal and you're driven by that, not the dollars that come with it, that's what starts to put you on this track to invent, create, ideate, get teams of people to buy into the vision and to mobilize and take things forward. So coming as an immigrant to the United States, I'm still not a US citizen, but in that process of going through my green card and then apply for citizenship next year. And I never regret it. It hurts and it sucks sometimes because you've got to sacrifice things, such as my parents being in Toronto or family members overseas. But at the end of the day, you've got to choose the life, the destiny, and your purpose. And what you're created and designed to do is what gave me 10 times more fulfillment than chasing a paycheck and chasing jobs because other jobs that's there. Because I believe that if you do the right thing, that eventually you get to the part in life where you get to have the byproduct of something beautiful coming out of the hard work, the determination, and the efforts that comes forth.
So the ability to delay gratification, not focusing on the short-term rewards of paychecks and holidays and all the benefits that come with that, willing to put that off. Let's
Yeah.
zoom in for a second. You talked about during the pandemic, similar to what I'm doing. You were interviewing a load of people. You were analyzing market trends. You were getting feedback from people. What Talk me through kind of high level then that process of speaking to all these people. What were the common themes and trends you found?
I'm driven by being able to solve problems. And the trends that I started to see, especially about 5 years ago, with AI and artificial intelligence starting to make names on newspapers, and it was slowly starting to emerge and arise, even though from the 1970s, 1940s, et cetera, it's been happening for decades. But a lot of the trends were aligned to fear in AI, ethics in AI, and innovation. So if you started to look at the different problems that humanity had, but looking at those three different elements around ethics, for example, and AI and new innovative ideas, you could start to see what's that common denominator by all of these. Sorry, what's a common denominator that's there? And you start to see that that's actually infused in a lot of principles in how machine learning models and AI systems are intelligently designed, but also ethically incorporating the human elements as well as audits, for example, looking at bias in AI, discrimination, data sets, variables, et cetera. All of those elements are byproducts of some of those foundational issues that people see with AI. So if you start to create a business that can try to address those issues, it starts to mobilize different elements faster and forward. And if a person is very good at communicating and has that charisma, you start to have other people buy into that vision. And that's how bit by bit it starts to scale and move forward. So Cornerstone X is my second AI technology company. My first one was called Cornerstone AI Audits, and that was intended to create an audit system for machine learning models to look at data sets and understand if any of X amount of variables, such as gender, ethnicity, zip code, if any of those variables had been improperly coded into a machine learning model that was in essence embedded into different systems, such as, say, the recruitment process or even selection of different candidates or contracts for large government entities. And this was in conjunction with McGill University in Montreal. So it first initially started off more in the R&D phase, looking and speaking to different university professors who were publishing papers around ethics in AI. And at that point, I thought, okay, let me familiarize myself. Let's take a look at some of the trends that they were seeing. But what if there was a way that I could fund some of this to work with different university students and see if we can create an MVP or to see if we can create a model or even publicly create articles on these topics? And say somebody was able to give us a large data set, what if we could run it through, it was like different causal inferences that were coded in a specific way for a machine learning model to come forth. And that is where I learned a heck of a lot in my first company. And in essence, what happened with that was we decided to encapsulate all of the learnings and put that into a master's level course at McGill University. And I would say in this master's level course, a couple of the lessons, probably towards the end of that course, were dedicated on the research and the work that we had done. So now McGill University and different professors there may have further developed it. Probably it's been about 3.5 years ago since I left Toronto in Canada and then came to the US. But with that first company, those were elements of a lot of lessons that I had to learn where I was very strong on the technology side because I had different professors, master's students, creating coding, writing papers, but then there was nothing on the business side. There wasn't a CFO, there wasn't a chief growth officer, there wasn't a chief partnerships and sales. All those different elements suffered. And that's where I saw, okay, in order to be an entrepreneur or in order to really grow a business, you have to have balance on both sides. So now coming to Cornerstone X and creating AI metahumans in the area of service support and new vertical for us in education. It's taking some of those ethical questions. Are my jobs going to be taken? Are digital avatars going to replace humans in the future? What are we going to do if a metahuman says something that's not in the parameters that we've given it? All these ethical, philosophical questions I'm now better equipped and able to handle. And I also have the right people on my team, the right ethical experts, security experts, chief technology officer on the team to be able to design, implement, and create the technology so it's fit for those purposes. So, in essence, in summary, David, it's taking a lot of the learnings from my first idea, first potential company, And even though I didn't think about commercializing any of those patents or the algorithms we were putting into place, it went to a university to be able to take forward and to educate more master's students, computer software engineers on bias, ethics, and AI, and decided to take those learnings to now create a second company and let it go global, launch in a global capacity.
Well, thank you for that insight. And I think it's interesting kind of tying that back to what you mentioned at the start around selection and connecting with the right people. You know, you never said that you were a technical expert, an AI expert, and you said that you weren't necessarily a business graduate. So how important was it moving from your first business, which largely from the sounds of things was an R&D business, to a commercially viable kind of product and solution that now has, achieved quite phenomenal things, which we'll come on to. How important was that selection process and identifying and hiring the right people that could drive that kind of commercial vision and business strategy?
You nailed it. That is exactly what I learned. That is meaning it is so important and critical to get that right. And then everything else is a byproduct of doing that one component correctly. And when I nailed the hammer on the nail and interviewed, got high level, high achieving executives at 200K salaries, et cetera, at some points along this software development and like life cycle of inventing a product. When I had top tier talent in, it made a heck of a difference. When I decided to be complacent and maybe not pay the higher amounts to get the right person in the right chair, in the right role for the right reason, that's where I realized other aspects of my business suffered, or it wasn't as efficient as possible, or it took longer to get through different sprints and tasks. A lot of people may claim that they are the gold star, but it's very different when you put them under pressure. And for us, with some of the clients that we have globally, you cannot afford to fail, and you have to execute with excellence many times in order to have good proven track records of success. So those are the elements of being able to aspire towards. But you said it correctly. Finding and hiring those right people is just a gold nugget I wish somebody had told me when I'm starting the journey, instead of trying to recruit your friends, potential friends of family members, different people that's there. Because sometimes it takes you longer on the journey to accomplish the tasks that you really want. And you've also got to know when you need help and raise your hand for that and find very competent and great firms to work with that can source those talented people as well.
Well, I think it's interesting you touched on within that element of research and selection, you touched on a few elements there of making sure you've got the right people, but the right people in the right roles and for the right reasons. You need to make sure that everyone's bought into the vision and they're driven towards it on a day-to-day basis. So it's so much more than just finding and attracting the right talent. So I guess the question is really keen on understanding and hearing what your kind of greatest lessons learned have been from building Cornerstone X and actually scaling it. What are some of the challenges and what are some of the lessons you've learned along the way there?
It all has to revolve around people. I didn't realize how much of business aspects of life and starting a company revolves around people, their characters, their attitudes, their level of effort. Sometimes you think it really revolves around the technology, and is the product doing what it says it's going to do? Is it generating sales? Is it creating partnerships? Yes, those elements are extremely important. But behind all of those elements are people. Sometimes the challenge is finding the right person to take on those roles. Sometimes the challenge is you've hired the wrong person, but yet your loyalty, and especially in a very small company, and you see that they're working extremely hard for the vision that you've created, but you know it's not that right fit. But you have deadlines and you need somebody to represent this aspect of the company in these meetings. What are those ethical calls that you make as a CEO? How do you do the right thing when you're bootstrapping? There's dollars going out the door, there's time that's going out the door as well. And you're put in a position where your shareholders, your partners, your team members are all looking at you to make the right decision every single day. And some of the lessons I learned was I had to do what was right and best for the company instead of what was the most comfortable thing to do. And every time I made the right decision that was best for the brand, the company, and it put me in a place where I may have had to lose a colleague that I loved working with for a long period of time, but it had to happen. Those were those moments where a year later, when you look back, you never regret because in that moment, it might be painful, but then as time is a healer, that's how I always look at it. Time is a healer. And with time, people heal, they grow, they move on. But a lot of those lessons that I learned was around the aspects of sometimes not even doing business with certain companies, with certain people, and having the guts to say no. Sometimes out of desperation, people may want alliances with giants. That's a term that I call alliance with giants. We think about some of the Fortune 100 companies that's there, and we have certain partnerships with some of them. And some of them we've realized that it's not the right fit. And there's no point trying to put a circle in a square and go down those paths where sometimes you have to listen to that gut and intuition and stick to it because it's usually right. And people just need to have the courage to listen to themselves and make those right decisions.
And that's so interesting what you were saying there. And it brings me back to a recent podcast I did where the guest was just talking about selection this, selection that, from who you hire to who you partner with to who you get in bed with, who you kind of do business with. And I think it's so interesting because as you were speaking there about, signing partnership agreements with these giants, it's similar in some ways to when you're taking external investment that it sounds great, sounds brilliant having having funding and having money and business coming to you,
Yeah.
but you've got ulterior motives and agendas. And actually, they might be veering you one way. So, yeah, it sounds great on your website, sounds great to be associated with these businesses, but actually, what's it really doing for your value? What's it really doing to your mission? And how far is it kind of guiding you off your path?
Yeah, well said. Well said. And I don't think a lot of people have the courage to do the right thing. Many times we settle for what we think might be best or give us the desired outcome. And sometimes that's not always cash. And time goes by and you realize, shoot, I made that alliance, I signed the paperwork for it, but yet my autonomy, my freedom, my integrity, how I run and operate a company or my division in a company has to be compromised. And those are some of those ethical decisions that I would highly recommend for your listeners to really stop, reflect, and think about before they start getting into bed with different people and different partners and even businesses.
Well, yeah, you certainly shone a light on some of the less glamorous aspects of running a business. But let's move attention. We've spoken so much about your journey, which has been massively inspiring. We've not yet spoken much about the kind of the success of the business. You mentioned within 12 months you reached a valuation of 30 million and you signed incredible partnerships and you've won a lot of business. So talk me through where the business is today and talk through some of those kind of key achievements.
Sure. So the business today looks like a company with about 25 people working for it. We've got our headquarters in West Palm Beach in Florida. We've got a team in London, in England, as well as in India, and starting a new division and team in Germany, in Stuttgart. So it's gone global, which is, I would say, a huge achievement for our team and our executives that's there because they've also had that vision of expanding and being very mindful of that and the way that we looked at different partnerships. With a company of about 25 people and now going from 25 to 40, we're always thinking about that next level of growth and achievements with milestones. A lot of this started off with us going to fundraise with a pre-seed round. We set off with a goal to raise $1 million. And within 4 months, we raised $1.5 million and oversubscribed by 50%. And that set us on a trailblazing efforts with just only two, three of us in a company together. So that's the pivotal point where it went from slideware to now getting your engineers recruiting, getting the right product managers, the right people in those right places. And because I learned the valuable lesson of balance with my first company, I had to ensure that everybody that we were bringing on either fits that right level of expertise in business and technology and also commercial partnerships, which is a part of business, but it also investing in finding the right people for those roles helped us propel things forward. Fortunately for me, I'm married to an incredible gentleman named Ben Bacon, and he's actually Irish descent, born in Minnesota, so American. but very, very gifted in the way that he presents, he speaks, and he's one of those few individuals I've met in my life that sit right on the fence where they know the technology angle and they also know business really well and they can communicate that. And when he and I went into different meetings together, it was very comfortable for us to know our ebbs and flows, but it helped us achieve great milestones such as signing global partnerships, getting a potential, I would say, multi-million dollar contract with the United States government, already having our technology called Hope, helping other people efficiently, an AI meta-human platform that is very seamless and easy to have a FaceTime call with the person in the area of customer service and support. So I can talk you through those elements in a moment. But in essence, some of those major milestones that we had was because we were able to communicate very clearly, get these contracts in the door, have our technology powering digital apps that are used for veterans in the United States, military armed force members transitioning out and having to deal with mental health issues, problems, and needed access, say, to a chaplain or understand their nutritional guidelines and dietary recommendations or a workout plan. So a lot of that is in an app called ValorNet, and Cornerstone X is the AI power for that app. So we've now started to see different use cases of our technology come forth. We're still in the process before we officially commercially launch next year globally to make sure that our early adopters have the best customer experience, the best support that they could have, where we're going to take a lot of our findings over the next couple of months to embed, ingrain in our business processes, and then come out very strong for next year to commercially launch and take this into multiples of millions of dollars ARR coming in. But one of our key achievements is finding right partnerships where those companies can adopt the technology, but also bring it to their customers as well. And it's helped set us apart on different business models that we have to look at, such as channel partnerships and honing in on that, but also taking the time for very unique use cases that's there and see, okay, do we have different skill sets on our team that can work with these very early adopters? Or is it best to give these opportunities to some of our channel partners in the UK? One, namely called Commercial Limited out in Cheltenham, huge, huge supporters that have invested in our technology, but also are going to be adopting Hope, 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 into many of their customers and their customer service and support areas. So just very grateful for the kindness and a lot of people believing in the dreams, visions, and talent and having these benchmarks of success that's also fueled by a lot of very strategic and good alliances.
So it sounds like it's a combination of things, that funding and, achieving, congratulations, achieving like an oversubscribed seed funding round, phenomenal achievement. And it is true what they say, cash is king. Having that money definitely helps, advance the mission. Coupled with that, the importance, you mentioned your husband, having that difference in background, different in way of thinking, and having an extra set of eyes. Is amazing how having partners and people that look at things differently can help advance the mission. What are some of the challenges you've noticed since, expanding internationally? I think particularly when you're talking about Europe, I know regulations probably very different to how it may be in the US and elsewhere. What are some of the biggest challenges you've encountered when, kind of expanding the business so far?
Regulations. The regulations in the US versus in the EU versus in the UK are very different, and especially regulations on data, privacy, users, the age limit for users. Can children even play with this technology? Should a child have a metahuman in their hands if they're looking at educational material that's coming forth? Where does the data get stored? Who has access to the data? If this is going to go in a Costa, for example, in a kiosk that comes into an area of service and support. So a lot of the areas that we now are very heavily focused and hiring good engineers in London, actually, who are helping us to think about the security measures, the data privacy measures that's there. But also, we had to make a choice as a company to not have access to data, to our customers' data, and let that information just flow back to them. And we not having access to that has helped us when it comes to regulations and ethics as a company. So we decided, I would say in our case, to do the right thing by allowing the customers to have sole access to the data, the information that's there. but also being mindful of making sure that we designed it in a way that those options can be given to certain customers when needed, and having the right analytics dashboard on our platform that can take all of those data points, curate it into one place, and being able to make sure that this is not designed with intentionality. And we've also taken into consideration the regulations and ethics in it.
Correct me if I'm wrong. It sounds like you're able to circumnavigate or get around it, for want of a better phrase, by you're not actually storing the customer data. It's just passing through without you collecting, storing it. And that's how you're able to then get around a lot of these things then.
Yes, and more. So that's one element of it, and then there's multiple elements that we're doing on a technology standpoint to be able to adhere to certain guidelines that's there. But in encompassing what you've said, David, yes, that's an element of it. Correct.
So looking forward then with all these kind of expansion plans, what do the next few years hold? What are the goals over the next 3 to 5 years? Where do you see Cornerstone X in that time frame?
AI in education is very important to us, and finding those right collaborations, early adopters to test our platform to see if it can be applicable is something that we're going to be heavily focused on for 2026. We're also looking at number two, empowering a lot of our channel partners that's there. So many of these nations and countries that I spoke about on our podcast, we have champions, and these are companies that have stepped up saying, we're willing to adopt your technology. We're willing to show this to our customer base. And we're willing to also help on the sales and partnership sides to come forth. And it is focusing on those C suite level executives that have stepped up to now make sure their sales team, make sure they've got the right marketing materials that comes forth. Myself and my husband, Ben, and then a few other executives, if that means we have to fly to Germany, then fly to London, we're there for those high level meetings, helping to teach people how to use the platform, demo the platform yourself, understand how to create those workflows, make this run efficiently. That's where we're going to be investing a lot of our time with those channel partners over the coming years. And then maybe 5 years from now, growth would look very different. It may be that we have now hit over 150 employees and beyond. And that's those moments in time where, for me, I'm looking for those right markers on the revenue aspect to come in to make sure we're funding top tier talent, that we've got good people that we're working with. And we're also seeing that multiple global alliances and partnerships have formed as a byproduct of the initial ones that we're going to be moving forward with. About five right now, five different areas of the world, and then start to look to expand more of those in the coming years.
How do you ensure that you're recruiting or selecting the right partners and then incentivizing them as well to make sure you're really driving the most out of those relationships and partnerships?
It really boils down to the C suite level executives, and they can get behind the vision. Then I'm willing to go to bat. If that means I've got to spend weeks upon weeks in these countries, meeting with them, developing the relationship, that's what matters to me the most. It's trust. If I can't trust a partner, then this is not going to be a good symbiotic relationship. And it's investing the time to do that right first, because then the contracts, the dollar amounts, all those other elements are a byproduct of really building trust and valuing that person. I'm always looking to make sure that I sit on the other side in the process of making a deal. And I have to say, is this deal fair for them as it's fair for me? And many of those times I made those right decisions, and we had signed paperwork because trust became one of those big elements. And I took, if that means I work extra and I invest more time to going up multiple times to see the team members in Cheltenham, for example, Commercial Limited, we can take as a use case because they're there in England. It's something absolutely worth investing in. And I'm not going to send anybody else there. As the founder and CEO, I'm going to do that. And that's one of the things that I love about small businesses, because we care so deeply about the people that have invested in us or that are taking a chance on us. And that has helped us to really formulate those right partners and discern, keyword for me, discern very quickly. Is this a path forward? Is this the best fit for everybody? And then start to walk forward in confidence.
So very much a quality over quantity approach then.
Well, yes,
And
100.
incidentally, Cheltenham, I mean, there's worse places you could be visiting than the Cotswolds in the UK. So thankfully you've not drawn too short a straw there.
That's right. I would say there's many incredible places in the UK.
Yeah, yeah, love it. And I guess, wrapping up, we've covered so much on this episode from your kind of entrepreneurial journey, even going back to kind of second generation immigrant, how that's kind of instilled this belief in you, this entrepreneurial drive, looking at that kind of introspection and the importance faith had in your entrepreneurial journey. You've got obviously ambitious goals over the next few years. What from all of these years and all these experiences you got would be your greatest lessons to people like myself?
Fantastic question and a great way to end our time together. There's so many lessons. And I would say one of my this is a really good one. It's making me think. I would say for me it was not being afraid to fail. And because I had failed so many times in my teenage years, when you overcame the fear of failure, when I overcame the fear of caring about people's opinions, that helped me break a different level in my mindset. And many people will think about like the facade, the mirage, the image, the brand, all those other aspects. But at the end of the day, you only have yourself, your talents, your drive, your charisma, your character, and a lot of transferable skills. Many people have baggage that they pick up and they take along with them. But my strongest recommendation is to take that time to do internal self healing, self reflection, self growth. Because when a person does that, and they go into the arenas, AKA different business meetings and different conversations that they have, they learn to navigate those spaces very well. And my big takeaway is I wish I had worked on myself in my teenage years, but at the time, social media, friends, all those different elements are much more important. But I'm beyond grateful and blessed that I did it in my 20s. So now I can conquer the world in my 30s.
Amazing. That's so inspiring. And I guess at our core, we are all narcissists. And I think no one else is thinking about us and judging us as critically as we do. I think can be incredibly empowering. And it sounds like that's sort of aligned and similar to what you're saying. Rigorous self, you know, reflection, introspection, but also, I guess, sort of detaching yourself somewhat from this facade or mirage that you're trying to kind of portray and project out to the world.
Exactly right. I'm not afraid if a person calls my baby ugly, meaning my company. I'm not afraid of those elements. I don't get offended by it. I'm willing to have a conversation around it, even. But that's because I'm so confident in my purpose, my calling, and my identity that I don't get rattled by what people say or their opinions of things. So you're exactly right in that aspect, David. Thank you.
Well, I found this also inspiring. Chantel, thank you. And I guess to conclude, thank you for everything you kind of contributed to this episode. I'm sure the listeners will take away from this as much as I've done. I know it's been packed through of so many interesting and insightful takeaways. So thank you so much once again for your contribution, Chantel.
You're welcome. And thank you, David, for having me on your podcast. And happy to connect with any of your listeners anytime. You've got my contact information. So anything I can do to support or to take virtual coffee meetings, happy to do so as well.